Backpackers of Reddit, what are your best travel stories?
How I ended up with an hour's credit in a brothel in Riga. It's a long story that I've posted before, but it usually gets a good reaction. Me and a friend were in Riga, Latvia. The fact he was a co-worker is relevant, and also the fact this was his first trip aboard that wasn't to a beach resort. I'd arranged the trip as he was interested in the off-the-beaten-path type of travel I enjoy and was a bit on edge, as in the last 3 days I'd taken him into the Chernobyl exclusion zone and also had a run-in with a soldier in Belarus. Anyway, in Riga I had arranged for us to go shoot some AK-47s and we were getting picked up. At top of the range Audi pulls up and two guys get out who look like they have no business owning a car that expensive. Stereotypical gangsters with shaved heads with scars. We get in and head over to the shooting range, which turns out to be closed. One of them has a heated phone call that explains that the owner is hungover but will open the place in an hour or so. They say they run a bar we can have a couple of free beers in whilst we wait. It's 10 AM, but sod it. We then drive for a bit and pull up outside a house with bars over the windows and an electric gate closes behind us. Bit weird. We go into the house and there is a swimming pool in the hallway, and we walk over to Cream Leather Bar. They let us know the beers normally cost €7, but we can have 2 free each, and a more, and we have to pay. Bit nervous at this point, so we get through the first beer quickly and relax a bit and start chatting with the guys. After a bit one of drops the bombshell that this is the best brothel in Latvia, and if we get bored there are girls downstairs for €40 an hour. Fuck's sake, what have we gotten into? After another beer I decide that it'd be interesting to chat with them about what it's like to be a gangster running a brothel. After a graphic conversation and being shown photos of various A-list celebrities sitting at the bar we are at, they then ask what we do for a living. I mention we work for a gambling company and realize I've made a mistake immediately. You guys must have a lot of money then? Fuck. Maybe you come back tonight and break the brothel record? My friend asks what's the brothel record, as he doesn't have a single inkling of what they could mean. 11, the guy responds. 11 what? Says my friend. My mouth is agape at this point. 11 girls at the same time. This is the point where most people would do the math in their head, but my friend did it out loud. 11 girls, that's €440, so €480 would break the record. I can afford that. Fuck. I mutter to him that they don't know he isn't serious. One of the guys starts to walk off saying he's going to arrange it for tonight. No. I manage to explain and we laugh it off. Anyway, they realize we aren't going to spend any money, so we start to drive back to the shooting range. Whilst driving, one of the guys turns around and says there is no shooting range. Get your cards and pins ready. We are going to play a game of whether you live or die. Major fuck. Me and my mate look at each other and go white. Dead silence for about 10 seconds before the guy starts laughing and says it was a joke. Bastard. We get to the shooting range and I don't care at this point and am just getting through my rounds as fast as possible. At the end the guy informs me they don't have the hand grenade I paid for. I ask for the €40 I paid for it back and the guy says no, surprised I even asked, to be honest. He says you can have explosion at my house. I tell him I don't want to blow stuff up in his garden and replies no, explosion in bedroom at brothel, 1 hour credit. I say no, but he insists and writes me out a voucher.
First time getting mugged, it was for my pizza. About a year back, I had this wild overseas trip, my first ever, and I went all alone. For an Aussie like me, it was hella exciting. So, let's rewind to this one time in Las Vegas. I was crashing at this hostel, and that's where I met this cool English chick, let's call her Emma. One brutal morning, both of us woke up nursing hangovers the size of Texas. All we could think about was pizza. So, we hit up the owner of the place, asking him where to score the best slice in town. He gave us the lowdown, saying it'd be a 20-minute hike to Pizza Paradise. Emma and I, still feeling the aftermath of the previous night's party, were like, screw it, let's do this. We started our pizza quest in the scorching Vegas heat, 45 degrees Celsius, man, it was a freaking furnace. Our heads were throbbing, and our stomachs were throwing a fit. Along the way, we chatted about our wild adventures so far, like it was some sort of hangover therapy. Finally, we hit the pizza joint, but our ordeal was far from over. We had to wait a good 25 minutes for our cheesy salvation. I went for a modest small and medium pepperoni, while Emma, in her epic quest for food, ordered an extra large mixed pizza. Our mission was clear: get back to the hostel, bask in the glory of air conditioning, and feast on our prize. The walk back felt like an eternity, and the scent of those pizzas was like a cruel tease. But then, right when we were practically at our doorstep, the pizza gods played a dirty trick on me. Some ninja, out of nowhere, snatched my pizza from under my arm. I turned, thinking it was a hostile buddy pulling a prank, but nope, it was a complete stranger, trying to jack my pizza. We got into this ridiculous tug-of-war with the pizza box, slices flying everywhere like confetti. Frustration boiled up inside me, and I eventually had to let go, watching the thief make a run for it with the last 3 slices. For a sec, I contemplated chasing her down, but instead just yelled, "Keep running, you fat mole." Yep, I pulled out some hardcore Aussie slang right there, which translates to, "Keep going, you shameless thief." So, there I was, pizzaless in the heart of Vegas. Emma was freaking out, going, "That was insane." And I was just standing there, shaking my head, muttering, "That chick just nicked my pizza." Back at the hostel, we had a good laugh over the ridiculousness of it all, and Emma, being the legend she is, shared half of her remaining pizza with me. As we chowed down, we couldn't help but chuckle about our pizza adventure in the blazing Las Vegas heat.
Don't drink before a flight. Not a backpacking story, but still a fun travel story. After I finished my master's, I had enough cash left over from a semester's living expenses that I could afford to blow a couple of grand before I started my job. I planned a trip, a week in Milan staying with a friend that was taking her last semester there, 2 weeks in St. Petersburg with a buddy who was born there and still had some family there, and 2 weeks all over Turkey. The trip was awesome, but the craziest story was between Milan and St. Petersburg, although it was only crazy for me. Try to put yourself in my shoes while reading this. The night before I was supposed to fly out, I had dinner with my friend who hosted me, and another girl from our program. We bought 3 bottles of awesome Sicilian wine. Them being girls, and me being an idiot, they had a glass apiece, and I finished the other 2.5 bottles. I woke up with the worst hangover of my hangover-filled life. My friend was kind enough to somehow force me to collect my belongings, get me out of the door to the nearest cafe, and fill me with multiple espressos and a whole lot of aspirin. This got me to the point where I could function independently, though not well. I dragged my ass on the train and made it to the airport. At the airport, I started looking for Pulkovo Airlines, the shitty carrier that was supposed to get me to St. Pete. After at least 3 laps of Milan Malpensa, the functioning brain cell told me that something is wrong. I booked through Travelocity, so my hangover, and my luggage successfully located their kiosk. After a bit of bad Italian on my part and bad English on their part, they told me that the airline stopped flying out of this airport a month ago, and I need to contact the rep. The rep materialized, looked me in my bloodshot eye, I only managed to have one open, laughed at me for a few minutes, and put me on an Aeroflot flight to Moscow with a connecting flight to St. Pete. I got on the flight to Moscow, got more water, got more aspirin, and more shitty, weak-ass Russian airplane coffee. The flight attendants took pity on my plight. One even offered me a beer for the hangover. I declined by slightly throwing up in my mouth. Finally, we landed in Moscow. Well, not really. We landed in Sheremetyevo 2, which is the international terminal. Now, this being Russia, everything is done with the least possible efficiency. This means that the international terminal is not connected to the domestic terminal. This means that a connecting traveler needs to get into a cab and take the scenic route around the airport for about 20 minutes. My second I started opening a bit, so I could take in the scenic view of what can only be described a dirt road, swarming with heavily armed men. As fate would have it, I made my connecting flight and was seated behind an obnoxiously drunk American guy and his no less obnoxiously drunk Russian friend. Me, being an American of Soviet birth, allowed me to be privy to the entirety of their inane conversation. Luckily, I was in no position to make any sudden moves, so I didn't attempt any violence. Finally, I was in St. Petersburg. But alas, the fun doesn't quite end here. Since I was about 6 hours late and on a different airline, I had no idea where to go and no one was meeting me. My buddy's number and address were in my email, so I needed internet access. I found a cabbie, promised him untold wealth in hard currency if he took me to the center, found an internet cafe, and held my hand through the process. It was about 10 p.m. local time. It was also June, which means that white nights were in full swing. In St. Petersburg, this means that the sun doesn't set, but makes a loop in the sky. So, I set out of the airport with that blazing ball of pain shining in my now open eyes. My driver, who was now my father, brother, and best friend, saved my sad existence. He got me to an internet cafe, let me use his cell phone, and then got me to the jazz club where my friend was partying it up. My luggage was deposited with the bouncer and I was deposited into the arms of my friend who greeted me with a silent WTF. I was handed an ice-cold shot of vodka and a pickle, gently placed in a chair, and all was right with the world. We left the club at 4 a.m. and the sun was still already up.